And we are live. Hey, mystery and thriller fans. It is Mystery Monday. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back for the second year in a row, live from LA, Aaron Philip Clark, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new red hot book, Blue Like Me. Aaron, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back.
Yay.
Um, I'll talk a little bit about Blue Like Me. So it's the second Trevor Finnegan novel. It takes place about a couple of years after the first book, and he's no longer a police officer, which obviously will make sense. If you read the first book, you know why he can't be a cop anymore.
Mm.
And he's become a PI, and so he is a kind of an interesting private investigator in the sense that he's investigating potentially corrupt police officers. And so he works with this lawyer who was also introduced in the first book, Bergman, and together they have taken on this mandate of wanting to, at least in Trevor's case, wanting to make amends for some of the things he did while he was wearing the badge. And so they go after corrupt cops, try to expose them. And there's some nuances there without giving away too much, but that's essentially where we find Trevor in this story.
That is where we find Trevor, including having to investigate his former partner as well as other potentially dirty cops. So I can't wait to get into every delicious, dirty detail, Aaron. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we are broadcasting live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And we're going to get right on into it. So if you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Here's how it works. Every Monday, I give you my 2 handpicked featured authors. You get to ask them anything. So ask Aaron about his character, ask him about Finn, ask him about his writing process, ask him about his TV writing career. We got a lot to get on into. So just get to the questions going in the comments. Now, while your little fingers are flying over the keyboard, I will kick off with some of Aaron's rave reviews. So let's start here with Publishers Weekly. I'm going to pop it up on the screen so we can all read it together. They rave Clark balances the personal and professional challenges adroitly as he further develops his lead. SA Cosby fans will hope for a long series run. Congratulations on that rave
Thank
review.
you.
So first of all, let's start with the fact, can we look forward to a long series run? Are you writing Finn number 3? How many books have you got planned? Tell us all the things, Aaron.
So, well, currently I'm not writing book 3, but I will. So it
Okay.
it is outlined. The
Okay.
story is it exists in a composition book, and so I have some other projects, and then I'm going to come back to Trevor Finnegan. But yes, so and I guess I call my shot in a Babe Ruth kind of fashion at the end of Blue Like Me, because I hint to what is going to occur in book 3, and it will be a missing person case. That's very close to home for him. So there's a little bit of a revelation at the end of the book, and it sets up for book 3. So yeah, so more books are definitely coming. I see the series in terms of length. So I see the series potentially being a solid 6 books. But we'll see. I don't know. But the way that the stories are kind of unfolding in my head, I see it as being 6 books with maybe around book 4 or 5. I think Trevor may return to the police department.
Ooh. Now, that actually it brings up another question that I have, Aaron. So when you say that, that you think this book, the series is going to be 6 books, I've never written a series, so I don't know anything about this. Are you already thinking 6 books ahead, or are you taking it book by book? I mean, or are you thinking, thanks for all the hearts up on Facebook, you guys. Are you already thinking like, oh, in book 6, like, I mean, you said he's going to go back to the police force in book 4. So then in book 6, I mean, how far do you have to think ahead when you're doing a series?
Well, and maybe it's because of my screenwriting background, but I see things long form. And so I think in terms of character, and I think right now, Trevor's not a hero, and he's evolving. So he's basically, when we find him in Under Color of Law and also Blue Like Me, he's going through an evolution. And in my head, I see that evolution ending and kind of culminating with three novels. And so, I think by then he'll be a hero, and I want him to have a happy ending. I mean, these are very I put him through the gauntlet in just about every book. So, I want that final book to be a nice, a nice send off for him, and he can kind of get his flowers, so to speak. But the idea is very much that we see the evolution of a very flawed character who slowly is able to turn his life around and becomes this hero in the end. And I kind of want to see how that plays out. So in my head, like I said, it could change, but 6 books is really probably going to be it.
Or maybe he's going to be the next Scarpetta. I mean, maybe you'll be, 30 books in. We
That's
could be
true.
having this conversation in 30 years.
That's true. I mean,
Aaron.
I could, if I could give him the Easy Rollins treatment, that would be pretty sweet. But
Yes.
I don't know. It's probably me. Like, I just don't know if I will tire writing about him. Right now, I have tons of Trevor Finnegan stories, in my head, but I don't know if I'll reach a point where, I just think like, it's okay just to let him be. He can exist, and maybe he'll exist in another form. The books may stop, but maybe he'll exist in, television, for a much longer
Ooh.
time. So we'll see.
And that actually brings me to my next question, Aaron. So, as a TV writer turned mystery novelist, what have you learned that has carried over that works? What have you had to completely let go of or unlearn? You said you're thinking ahead. That's something that's similar in both. What isn't similar? What has worked? Give us the skinny.
Well, I think when it comes to, writing scripts and at least for noir fiction and for crime, a screenplay demands, for the story to move along. There really shouldn't be any waste, right? And so I think hopefully I've adapted that well when I'm writing my novels. I never had a problem with cutting big chunks out. And if it's something that's really good, I'll save it. Like, I have a folder that basically says, people use that term, don't kill your darlings. Well, I try and save them. So I basically have a folder if it's a passage and I'm like, man, this is really good and I like it and I like where it was headed. For Trevor Finnegan, I'll just put it in the folder and then it might find its way into another book. So I never really get rid of anything. So I try and, salvage as much as I can. Now, when it comes to scripts, obviously it's a little bit different because when I'm writing a script, I'm thinking about budget and I'm thinking I have to keep this, within within a healthy budget or there's going to be an issue. But when I'm writing a novel, I tell my students all the time when I teach, I say, well, you have the freedom, it's like if you want 3 helicopters, then have it, if it gets adapted, they may only have one or erase the helicopter altogether, right? So, but if you're writing some big budget action scene, then have fun with it because there's no one telling you like, oh, you got to trim that because it's going to be too expensive, And that's the freedom when you're writing fiction.
What is the name of the folder?
You know what? That's a good question. I have to double check, but it's some play I have on Darlings. But yeah, I have to double check. Something like Save Your Dollars, something like that. It's probably not as interesting the title as much as what's in there, but yeah.
The name of my folder where I put cut things is Great Writing I May Need Later.
Hey, there you go. I mean,
because I don't want to say trash. that would not be the positivity that I am seeking, Aaron. I need like more supportive.
Hey, whatever works. I mean, at least you have a folder. It's like I hear horror stories sometimes of stuff that doesn't get saved, and people say, "Oh, if I only had these 2 chapters," and I can't remember, how basically like they want to recall them, but your memory kind of fails and you can't remember what you had in there. So
Right, exactly. Best thriller books says Blue Like Me is a gritty, dark, and gripping crime thriller featuring flawed characters, complex relationships, and facing your past head on. Aaron Philip Clarke has delivered a second straight compelling novel in this series that will appeal to fans of Michael Connelly and Raymond Chandler. So first of all, congratulations on that rave
thank you.
review. Does that resonate, Aaron? Are you like, yes, I was going for those Connolly Chandler vibes, or were you like, whoa, that was an unexpected surprise?
Oh yeah, definitely for the noir aspects of the story. And especially because it's set in LA. So, it's very much what I consider to be a neo noir story. Set in LA, which has its own, um, I would say its own kind of flavor, right? So LA noir varies from other cities because there's certain aspects of Los Angeles that you might not find in other places. I mean, LA does the author Mike Davis, who recently passed away, he wrote City of Courts about LA, and he said essentially LA is this sunlit mortuary where you could rot without feeling it. And I think that pretty much captures that captures the Los Angeles that I write about.
Ooh, ooh, okay. A sunlit place where you can rot without feeling
Yeah,
it.
a sunlit
Okay.
mortuary.
Sunlit mortuary. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sunlit
So he,
mortuary where you can rot without feeling it. Well, that
yeah.
is dark. That is gritty. But having been to LA a few times, I feel like that does kind of capture it. So I am loving that. Aaron, let's talk about your evolution of Trevor from book one to book two. So he is in this one, I don't want to give any spoilers, obviously, but his former partner, he has to do a little digging around her and then becomes an eyewitness to something he was not expecting to see, which leads him down a dark and twisty path. Let's talk about, so first of all, I love the interplay of seeing her in a new light,
Mhm.
and seeing, but then also, and seeing him in this new role. So let's talk about, well, I guess it's really a question about craft. Did you plot this all out, or do you sort of roll with it and picture yourself, in Trevor's, shoes, witnessing this violent event that he sees, or how does it work for you?
Well, well, in the case of his partner, so in the case of Sally, she is kind of foreshadowed in the first novel. So in that kind, basically the reason he doesn't have a partner in the first novel is because she was on maternity leave, and
Yeah.
so she kind of, excuse me, so she kind of missed, his kind of downfall. So,
Yeah.
and he hasn't seen her, right? He hasn't seen her since, and so it's been years. And essentially, when he gets the name of these new cops that he's going to investigate, and he sees her name on this sheet of paper that the lawyers give him, he becomes kind of overwhelmed and overcome with all these feelings, and he's hoping that's not the same Sally Munoz. Like he's hoping that's not his partner, or his ex partner. So when he does see her, it's like he processes it for a moment, but then in an instant, her partner is executed, on the sidewalk in Venice Beach. So, he doesn't have opportunity really to process any of it. He just goes right into his training and kind of, is thrown into this situation where he's now an active participant. He was 1 minute he's doing surveillance, now he's an active eyewitness because he does do things to try and mitigate the situation, and even takes off after the culprit. So, he puts himself at great risk because he's not a police officer anymore. But he's still, part of it is that he's always going to be blue. He's always going to be a cop inside. It's something that doesn't get turned off. So,
Hmm.
he follows his training and tries his best to apprehend, the suspect. And that doesn't go as he expects.
No, no. So as you just said, that foreshadowing his now ex partner Sally in the first book. So you were planning in book one, you were planning to bring Sally back.
Definitely. So Sally was going to return.
Yeah.
As far as the plot goes, I mean, it was going to be basically, I guess you'd call it a buddy cop book. And I wanted to have two officers who have to work together who, or at least in Trevor's of PI, but essentially them having to work together, but under these really clouded circumstances where people feel compelled. Because if the first book was very much about the impact of trauma on the characters and what that does and how that could push us to become things that we don't want to be. This book is very much about conflicted and toxic relationships and what that really looks like. So whether or not it's in Trevor's personal life or his professional life, the relationship that he has with Sally is incredibly toxic. And the only reason he's kind of working with her is because he feels like he has to. And then later in the book, he gets even more invested in the case because he loses his uncle and he believes that there's a connection. So once his uncle becomes a victim, or I should say his fake uncle or play uncle, as we say it in our community, once that happens, then he really feels like, oh, I'm invested in this. I got to figure out what's going on, because he feels like, Sally's partner's murder and the murder of his, or potential murder of his play uncle, is connected. So, and I saw that kind of playing out in my head. I wasn't sure when I sat down and kind of outlined. I'm not sure how it all fits together. It isn't until I really sit down and I start kind of putting the pieces together that I kind of see how it may go. But a lot of it is organic. So as I'm writing the actual chapters, things change.
And did you always intend for Trevor to have a female partner?
Yes.
And why was that important to you?
Because I wanted to explore the dynamic of female law enforcement officers.
Mm.
So, that's why within the book, she is struggling with her own family issues. Much like Trevor, but it's a greater cost for her because she's a mother.
Mm-hmm.
So, for her, she essentially has to navigate the job, but also has to be present for her family. And she wasn't able to do that. So she's actually in the midst of losing them and desperately is trying to hold on to the few little things that are positive in her life. So she loses her partner. She's also in the process of losing her husband, potentially may not be able to see her children. It's a great cost that these characters ultimately have to pay to do the job and be as effective as they can. If you're in robbery homicide, it's a very demanding job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way that you illustrated that is something that I think every working mother that I know feels to varying degrees. But in this intense, literally life and death career of law enforcement, it's amplified, it's exponentially, it's like Technicolor, it's so much more intense because of what's at stake and because of the
Yeah.
stress that they're under, and because it literally could be life and death at every single day, every single hour. So it was interesting that I thought that you did that in that way, but are also showing the struggles of every working woman feeling
Mhm.
torn between her role as a mother and her role as a law enforcement officer and as a wife and as a mother and as a partner and all of these roles that we all have in our lives. So I loved that aspect of it.
Thank you.
Steph Cha, who is the LA Times Book Prize winning author of Your House Will Pay and Juniper Song Mysteries. Let's pop her. She has some great stuff to say. Let's pop that up so we can all read it together. She says, Blue, like me, sees former LAPD detective Trevor Finnegan on the other side of law enforcement as a private investigator with a knack for busting crooked cops. Clark takes us on a propulsive, I'll read it over here, twisting tour of greater LA and explores the abyss that opens under the confluence of money, power, and police corruption. Wow. Steph Cha just nails it there
She does,
in
yes.
such a beautiful, powerful, poetic way. So let's take that piece by piece, and then I'm going to get to your question, Julie. Thank you for that. So first of all, Aaron, as a TV writer, as a mystery writer, and as a teacher, what have you learned, and what do you think the secret is to writing propulsive, twisting tales, because that's what keeps those pages flying, I think. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I would say it starts with character dynamics, and
Mm.
so that's what I focus on. I think about it in terms of I do a nice character sketch, and then I think, what can I do to this character to push them and force them to have to change, and that oftentimes plays out in the plot. So for Blue Like Me, for this book, I wanted it to feel like it just keeps snowballing for Trevor, that the stress, whether it's personal, whether it's connected to the case he's investigating, I just wanted to keep kind of piling up. And that's probably a very noir thing, right? So we in noir, we put the characters through the gauntlet, right? Like they
Mm.
have to contend with so many hurdles. And I really wanted that to be present in this book, because in order to force a character like Trevor to change, that I kind of need the conflict to be ramped up. Um, you know, in almost it's on every page. There's some level of conflict,
Mm.
whether it's like Sally, doing something like when she gets into it with these people at this bar, and now that forces him to get involved. But there's every scene. There's some level of conflict, if it's between he and Sally, or it's between people that they encounter, or people who could be connected to the investigation, or the corrupt cops. It's just, I wanted it to just boil over with conflict.
Well, boiling over with conflict, you have, Aaron, you have. So on thank you for that answer. I like how you tied it to the noir and how you broke it down for us in terms of making sure that you have conflict on every single page. Let's get over to Julie's question. Julie, welcome to the conversation. She said, I just bought this book. Thank you. And she says, I look forward to reading it. Have you ever gotten any pushback from cops about the crooked cops? Ooh, good
Hmm.
question, Aaron.
I mean, truthfully, the law enforcement officers, the ones who have talked to me about it, are writers themselves, and a lot of them are retired. And I think something happens to officers when they retire and they have a little bit of time to look back on the job. And excuse me. And what I've been able to kind of distill and get to the heart of is that most of them have appreciated, my writing in terms of not demonizing police, but showing how it really is. And it's not so much of this blanket, I write cops or kind of thing, but it's more of like, I wrote about characters who just happen to wear badges. Like, these are just people, and they happen to be cops. And that's always been my approach. It was never so much of trying to write, you know, cops and everything we've seen in terms of like the tropes that are all on most cop shows on television. It's not that, because that's not who those people really are. Like, who you are when you put the badge on greatly differs from who you are when you probably don't have it on. And so,
Ooh.
there's always going to be duality with the characters. Who Sally is when she's wearing the badge is not who she is with her children,
Mm.
or her husband, or ultimately her, could potentially be her ex-husband. So, that's the idea. So I've never gotten pushback, because most people look at it as, these are just characters. They're just literary human beings, and they're just trying to make their way in the world. And I don't, I guess to an extent, I maybe pull back, because there's a lot of things I could talk about in terms of law enforcement, things that I experienced in my training, stories that we were told. But truthfully,
Mm.
nobody wants to hear that stuff. Like, that stuff is like, that's like the gritty kind of cop stuff that requires you to have one or two drinks after hearing that stuff. I wouldn't want to write about that stuff, so I mean, there's cases that we analyzed and had to discuss that would just make you scratch your head and say, I just don't understand some people. There's no silver lining to that stuff. It's just, people who do things that we'll never truly understand. But I choose not to write about about those aspects, just because I just don't think it's very, to me, I don't think it's giving anything to the reader, except the fact that cops have to deal with some disgusting situations and tragic situations.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia saying, what a great answer. Thank you. And she wants to hear the gritty stuff. Julie, you're reading my mind. I also want to hear the gritty stuff. I think what we should do is start a book club
Of just
for,
the gritty stuff. We'll call it the gritty stuff.
oh my God, the gritty stuff. The gritty stuff. Or we could just pull from your review and call it the gritty gripping stuff. The
Hey.
gritty gripping crime thriller stuff. We should start a Trevor Finnegan book club, and then have Aaron come in as a guest speaker and give us the skinny on the gritty.
Hey,
Yeah, because it
let me
is.
know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You heard it here first, everybody. So the book is out tomorrow. So I'm going to pop the link up right now. And here you go. You'll want to, here it is. I'm going to pop it up. So no matter where you're watching from, you can pre-order right here. Julie is in for the book club. All right, Julie,
Okay.
we're going to do it. No matter where you're watching from, Facebook or YouTube, here's the link. Pre-order tonight. The good folks at Murder by the Book will ship it out to you tomorrow so that you can read Trevor Finnegan book 2, Blue Like Me. Now, Aaron, we have 4 minutes left. So anybody has any last questions, get them going. I am going to take a few questions that were submitted in advance. First from Samantha. She wants to know, do the books need to be read in order, or can you jump into book number 2?
Oh, you could definitely jump into book number 2. So, I mean, there are some through lines, but I think they're very much like standalone novels. So, yeah, I mean, I encourage people to start with Blue Like Me, and see, it's a little bit different than the first book, but in some ways, I enjoyed writing Blue Like Me more than I enjoyed writing the first book.
Why did you enjoy writing Blue Like Me more than Under Color of Law, Aaron?
When you're doing an origin story, it's hard. Like when you're introducing a
Oh,
character for
okay.
the first time, it is really, really difficult. And then it's topical, right? So I was writing that, I was doing edits on that at the same time, George Floyd's
Oh my gosh,
murder.
of course.
So, so it was like, it was a very, writing that book toward the tail end was incredibly stressful and taxing, emotionally
Right.
taxing. So,
Of course.
I with this book, there's some time passage, and I did that on purpose to kind of move away, and deal with some different issues. So, yeah.
So, okay, so it was about what was going on out there, and also the burden
Yeah.
of writing an origin story, because it has to do so much work in terms of establishing who Trevor is, his origin story, his family, all of that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I wonder if you'll enjoy writing book number 3, because then you'll really know
Oh yeah.
Trevor. You expect
Like
you'll,
it's
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at this stage, it's like we know who Trevor is. We know him as a character, and so now it's just like being able to watch him work without having to question his methods.
Without being him, exactly, his methods or his madness.
Yeah.
Um, Alan would like to know if you have any advice for aspiring writers as either a teacher or a published author.
Sure. So, my advice I give my students all the time, is to find a story that you're passionate about, like that you really, really have burning inside. Don't write for, I guess, what you think might sell, because that changes like the wind. So write what you're really, really passionate about, that story that you have burning inside, and then just keep going. Don't stop. Finish it, because really there's something that happens when you finish that first book, and it's like a gift that you give yourself, because after that, you could do it. So there's really nothing else stopping you,
Oh, I love that.
from continuing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. But as a TV writer, did you doubt that you could do it? Did you
No,
still receive that gift of
I think
knowing you could do it?
I just, so I got I started in screenwriting, and then I went to fiction. I got my MFA, in fiction, and that transition in school was hard, because I had spent years studying screenwriting. And then, fiction is similar, but there's a lot of, there's plenty of differences there. And so being able to kind of get my head into a different, being able to craft prose and really take my time, I had to make that transition. But, story is story. And I think once you're able to kind of master both worlds, as you come up with stories, sometimes I'll think of a story and I'll think that'll make a great novel. And then at other times I'll think that'll make a great pilot. And, that's
Ooh.
that's but it's all narrative. It's all about trying to decide like, okay, what form should this story exist?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I want to get to two more reviews because I think these are so great. First up, this one from Stephen Mac Jones, who is the author of the August Snow series, says Aaron Philip Clarke is a storyteller of immense talent, engaging the reader from the first to the last page. Blue Like Me is crime fiction of epic human proportions, mesmerizing, expansive, intriguing, and unforgettable. I mean, Aaron, wow, I love that.
I mean, I when he sent me that blurb, I didn't know what to say. I mean, it blew me away.
I would have it tattooed on my face so that everyone can enjoy it. And I want to get to this one as well. This one is a long one, but it is such a good one. Blue Like Me is as real as it gets, and there's no mystery as to why. The author clearly knows LA. Aaron Philip Clarke's background in law enforcement, coupled with his work as a screenwriter, shines through in his finely crafted protagonist, Trevor, aka Finnegan, a former LAP detective turned PI. The pages turn and the tension builds all the way up to this novel's thrilling and wonderfully heartfelt conclusion. In a time of growing distrust for all in a time of growing distrust for all levels of law enforcement, Trevor Finnegan, I'm going to get to the rest of this. I want to pause there for one quick second because Aaron, I want to talk about the humanity that they're referencing and the heartfelt part. How do you get into that heartfelt space? Do you meditate? Do you set an intention? Do you just let yourself be vulnerable? How do you get into that space where you can create that?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm asking for a friend and the friend is me.
Well, I guess, I start with, in terms of characters, after I do my character sketch, what would be their fears? What are their secrets?
Ooh,
And then I think about what situations could potentially expose those secrets or force them to have to face something that they've buried for a long time. And that's kind of, I think maybe that could be, what brings out some of the heartfelt elements, because it's the things that these characters try to keep hidden, and ultimately they can't. And sometimes it's situations where it's actions that they've taken, especially with Trevor Finnegan, it's things that he did that, especially if you look at the first book, would never have come to light had it not been, for the death of the recruit. So, the circumstances basically bring these things from darkness into the light. And I think that maybe that's what I think that could be what people are getting at, in the sense, that things are revealed that are painful or can be, hard for those characters to process. And when that happens, we get these true character moments. Something is stripped away and we get to see them for who they really are.
Oh, I love that, Aaron. I love that. Hey, readers, gotta read. Always a pleasure to see you pop up. She would like to know, is Trevor similar to another character that you have written about in a TV show or movie, Aaron?
No, Trevor, I mean, not that I've written about. I mean, Trevor really came out of, he's a mixture. So he actually came out of, a little bit of my experience in the academy, police officers that I've known, some police officers in my family. So he's this amalgamation of a lot of things. But I think when I was writing him and I was trying to think of Black detectives, who are, I should say, police detectives, it was hard because there's not a whole lot of them in the space. And I think that, in my head, I was thinking very much about one of my favorite detectives from Homicide: Life on the Street, which was he was played by Andre Brower, so he was Frank Pimbleton, and he was just this great, detective, and I just really, really wanted to explore some of the nuances that I saw, how they kind of wrote his character. In that show, I kind of wanted to explore a little bit of that. And then, I love Luther on BBC, Idris Alba. So, there was some, I guess you could say, some characters that were probably floating around, in my head that I kind of pulled from unwittingly.
Thank you for that great question. And Erin, thank you for that fabulous answer. I actually, in the course of research for my book, ended up learning about the first Black detective in the NYPD.
Oh yeah.
And about his path to the badge and his life integrating as the first. And I think it's always so hard to be the first.
Oh yeah.
And the expectations and the burdens of that and how to navigate them and all of the extra work and other rigors that were unfairly put on him that he overcame because he wanted to be part of the force, and he was. And it was a really, really fascinating story. Oh, hey readers. She said, those are some of my favorites. Thank you.
Cool.
Yay. All right, y'all. Oh my goodness, we are over time, but time flies when you are having fun. The book is out tomorrow, and you can grab your copy tonight. Here again is the link. Pre-order, no matter where you're watching from, Facebook or YouTube. Here's the link. Pre-order tonight, fam. Get your fingers on Trevor Finnegan, book 2. Blue Like Me. And as always, all the good conversation continues over in Mystery and Thriller Mavens on Facebook. We will talk about Trevor. We'll talk about all these things. So join, free and open to all. Erin, thank you so much for coming back. We can't wait to hear about Trevor book 3. So come back. I'm assuming next year it'll be out.
Fingers crossed. I'll try my best.
Get back to work. Stop celebrating. Get back to work.
I know, right?
Keep celebrating. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for spending Mystery Monday with us, and I will see you next week. Have a great week.
Thank you.